Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm Paul Comfort, and this is our quarterly Transit Unplugged Insider podcast with Julie Gates. Julie, thanks for joining the show today. We switched sides of the microphone.
I know. It's always good to do these shows with you, Paul. For those of you who don't know, Paul and I work together. I work behind the scenes as executive producer of all the Transit Unplugged shows, and I get to work with this fantastic soul. And Paul, I want to say Merry Christmas. Here we are, Christmas Eve. What are you doing with your family? What's your tradition?
Yeah, exciting times. Christmas is always a big holiday for us. As you know, we have 6 children, my wife and I do, and 10 grandchildren. So they'll all be over our house on Christmas Day. We'll have 20 people here, and there'll be lots of scurrying around and lots of fun. It'll be great, a meal and all that. Actually, this year, to make it easy, we decided to order Chipotle takeout. So the night before, we're going to go Chipotle or Christmas Eve and today, the day the show is running, and get that. So we'll warm it up on Christmas afternoon and have it for everybody.
That's a great idea. Keep it as low stress as possible. And with that many people, it's crazy anyway. I can't even imagine. 10 grandkids. Congratulations. I know you've had some new babies this year.
Yeah, we had 2. Yeah. And, we just did all the whole big, Thanksgiving style meal on Thanksgiving, which is only a month before. So anyway, it ought to be a lot of fun. And it's a great time to focus on others, which really is the focus of what we do in our industry, right? We're focused on serving others, opening up access to them, to all of life's opportunities. Christmas is a great way to do that as well, to focus on others.
Well, let's dive into our Transit Unplugged Insider. This is the one time we slow down and I interview Paul about all the things that are going on. Paul is at a ton of behind-the-scenes meetings with transit executives, with government officials. He is in Washington, D.C. a lot. In fact, you just had a chance to go to Washington for a really fun party. What was the party you attended?
Yeah, it was the WTS D.C. chapter holiday party. This is Women in Transportation. And the international chair is Bridget Beato, my friend, but the DC chapter is very active, Washington DC, and so they had 400 people at the Washington DC Press Club. I was honored this year to be the MC for the award ceremony, where we gave out $37,000 in scholarship money to women who are pursuing their higher education, bachelor's, master's, or doctorate, and everybody that's anybody in transit in DC comes there, and there's some great other awards given out to friends of mine. And so it was a wonderful evening to kind of socialize and gossip and find out what's going on behind the scenes, as you said.
Right. So we start this show off with a section of the top 5 things every transit leader needs to know right now. And Paul has his finger on the pulse of everything because he's talking to all of you. He's taking your texts and your phone calls. He always has the Chatham House rules. He never says who says what, but he has all the information. And we like to use this opportunity to information share so we can all do better in the industry. So we got 5 questions we're going to cover in this section, Paul. Number 1, the FTA just reversed a rule that tied transit low and no emission grants. Well, I'm not even sure it was a low no, but it did tie grants to immigration enforcement. That just got removed. What does this mean?
That's right. And you covered that, Julie, on your News Minute a couple weeks ago for people who get that. If you don't get that, I encourage you to listen each week to that. But the FTA eliminated the ICE cooperation requirement from transit grant agreements following a federal court decision. Agencies are no longer at risk of losing funds if their community does not engage in immigration enforcement. This kind of reduces, the political tension that was around that. A lot of people were concerned about that. Transit agencies were, they don't necessarily control immigration in their community and what the response is to that. So they didn't want to be tied to that. And so this eliminates that and gives agencies confidence to apply for grants without that uncertainty.
Much better. I mean, transit is doing 100,000 jobs already. It's hard to add another department's work into the work that they're already doing. So that makes sense to me. All right. Well, number 2, where does the transportation reauthorization stand right now? We're approaching that 2026 deadline. So what is the status?
Yeah. So as I think most of our listeners know, here in the United States, we have something called the Reauthorization of Transportation Act. Remember, it started way back in 1964 with the Urban Mass Transportation Act. Peter Varga does a great job of describing all that in my recent book, The New Future of Public Transportation. But every 5 years or so, we have to reauthorize the federal government's involvement in transit. And so it's time. It expires September 30th of next year, and it goes to the House and the Senate, and then has to go to the president. There's a lot of priorities that are described in there. The House did a listening session, had a portal where they would listen. The House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, Sam Graves chair, where they were listening to people. We went up. I'm chair of the North American Transit Alliance. Folks on our team testified on that. The IIJA, which was part of the overall Bipartisan Infrastructure Act last year. All of that was involved in the funding of it, but this is the reauthorization to allow that to occur. So the House was hoping to have that on the floor by the end of the year, but because of the government shutdown and the House of Representatives basically being closed down for about a month, that's not going to happen, it doesn't look like. And so the Senate's also working on their version of it. The administration now, President Trump's administration, through FTA Administrator Marcus Molinaro, they're also putting their feedback into it. And so I anticipate in the first quarter of the new year, a version of the Reauthorization Act to come onto the House floor. And one of the big questions that's happening right now is the mass transit account in the Highway Trust Fund. People have been aware that, we've been getting funding through, the traditional transit funding, the grants that are done by formula, but there's also been money coming through the Highway Trust Funds. Some of that is potentially changing now. And so all of that will hopefully be, resolved in this new Reauthorization Act, so people will kind of know where to apply and where they can get their funds from.
That's really helpful. I know APTA does such a good job of lobbying legislation. So if you want to follow that, I would recommend popping on the APTA newsroom. They do a really good job of keeping people informed on that topic. That's an important one. It's confusing when the funding gets moved around. Okay, number 3, the top 5 things every transit leader needs to know right now are federal grant programs like the low, no emission and bus facilities going forward, or could the budget and reauthorization affect them?
Yeah, good question. The proof is in the pudding, right? The FTA just awarded nearly $2 billion in low and no bus and bus facilities grants. So the money is still flowing is the answer to the question. There's concerns about the budget, right? The federal budget, which is separate from reauthorization. Everybody remembers the government had a shutdown, right? So it wasn't funded. Then we got a short-term kind of extension of the existing thing, which will end up in the early part of the new year. It wraps up. And so they're still concerned, could we have another shutdown? How will that impact the budget for this fiscal year? And so there's still uncertainty there about how that's going to happen. But the grant funding that's already been approved under last year's budget is still moving forward. They just released all those funds.
I saw a big one going to Houston. They got a big one. It was great.
Yeah.
Okay, question 4 of the top 5 things every transit leader needs to know right now. How are upcoming mega events like the FIFA World Cup and LA 2028 Olympics changing transit planning right now in the U.S.?
Yeah, it is big. The federal government's basically viewing the Olympics and even the FIFA Cup as nationwide events. And so the FTA issued new guidance, training, and technical assistance tools for major event host cities. You see, Julie, we were talking about doing a documentary this coming year on, what's wrong with Transit America, why less than 5% of Americans ride public transportation on a regular basis. But in contrast to that, on big events or football games or concerts, coming into your city, people that normally don't ride transit do try it. And so we want to make sure they have a great experience when they try it out for that one time. And so it's very important that we have enough vehicles available for these big events. The FTA is looking in places like bus safety. There's charter service compliance rules that people who are in transit are very familiar with. There's also ADA accessibility and paratransit guidelines, which have to be followed when you're adding this extra service. There's surge demand planning. There's security coordination across federal, state, and local agencies. Normally, transit agencies are going to see big spikes in ridership when at a FIFA Cup, right? And, I was talking with Frank White from Kansas City. They've got some games coming there, and he's telling me with the planning they're doing, getting ready for that. Of course, games are coming to Miami as well. And so some agencies have to even borrow vehicles to get ready or prioritize what they're doing. So it's a lot of work being done right now. And the federal government's right in the mix of all of it. You may have seen that DOT held a big event this last week, the week we're recording this in December, where they brought everybody together and said, let's make the FIFA Cup happen well for people, that they can ride their the bus service into the stadiums.
Yeah, it's exciting times. And I think transit does it best. It really does a great job at big events. We've seen it everywhere with the Taylor Swift concerts and Super Bowls. So I can't wait to see these primo events joining us. Okay, question 5 of the top 5 things every transit leader needs to know right now. LA is seeking more than $3 billion in Olympic transit operations. Do you think it's going to happen? And if not, what will they do?
Yeah, we did a show on this. We went to Los Angeles this year and talked with, Conan, the COO, and a lot of their senior staff, the chief innovation officer, et cetera, and talked about how ready are they going to be for what they're trying to be, a transit-first kind of, car-free Olympics, meaning they don't want to have a lot of cars parking at the stadium or any if they can get away with it. And so they need this money, and so they've requested it. Of course, it depends, right? If the budget passes. And so they're going to need a new budget in order to fund that. The Olympics are coming in 2028. It still is a little bit a ways, but there's so much planning being done right now. Thousands of additional buses are going to be needed. This has happened before. It's not the first time. A lot of cities will loan their buses and their trains. I was just talking to a CEO a couple days ago about how they loaned vehicles the last time there was that and how they're planning to do so again, train vehicles this time. We were talking about, I was talking to the CEO of the Salt Lake City, the Utah Transit Authority, Jay Fox, about that and how they're working on that now, loaning vehicles to cities for all these things. So it's a lot of collaboration and cooperation in our industry. It's one of the great things, right, Julie, you and I have talked about, is that we're not in competition. Salt Lake City's not in competition with Las Vegas or Los Angeles. They want to help each other because our system only serves our city. And so we understand that when a big event comes our way, like the Winter Olympics are coming in 2034 to Salt Lake, we're hoping there'll be some reciprocity, right? And so there's temporary, staffing, specialized staffing, depots, fleet staging areas all have to be done up, accelerated BRT and rail projects. All this is happening. And so I'm hoping that the FTA gets the funding they need to help LA out during this. It'll be a test of whether we can successfully do these mega events. And I know the federal government is looking at this as a all of nation, all of government response. And so let's look forward to that happening, hopefully, for Los Angeles Metro.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll all support however we can. That's exciting stuff. All right, we're going to move into hot topics now, Paul. You attend a lot of conferences. You see a lot of people. One of the hot topics that you've told me about is everyone's chatting about bus rapid transit. What's going on with BRT? What are you hearing when you're out and about with people?
Yeah. Cities like countries like Colombia and South America and other places have been really focused on bus rapid transit for a long time before it really became hot here in the U.S. We went down there a couple years ago to see what was happening with bus rapid transit in Latin America for our Transit Unplugged TV show in Sao Paulo. And it is now, like you said, Julie, the hottest new trend in America. Many early adopters were, many folks who are focused on light rail, and they look at the expense of it. Matter of fact, just last month, I was talking with the Secretary of Transportation of one of our states here in America, and some folks were asking for a light rail system in the suburbs of one of their major cities. And she was asking me about, what do you think, Paul? And, and I told her just what I'm telling everybody now. Bus rapid transit is, you can move it, you can do it quicker, you can do it faster, you can do it cheaper, and it serves almost the same function with dedicated lanes. If you do bus rapid transit right, you have the buses running at high frequency during peak hours, and then you can move it if you have to, whereas you can't really move rail once it's in the ground. Now, look, when I was head of the MTA in Baltimore, we were working on, and they're still around 81% complete now. I just checked last week, maybe 84% complete, I think it was, when I was at that holiday party you mentioned. I talked to the people in charge of it there. So the Purple Line around Washington, D.C. is a light rail line, 16.2 mile light rail line. It's going to connect up Washington Metro. It's a great, brand new light rail service. But when you think about what's happening right now, BRT is dominating the small starts money when it comes from FTA, just under $400 million. It's faster construction, lower risk, easier political approval. Look at what they did in Tucson, which we covered in our TV show. How that they have had $10 billion of transit-oriented development around their light rail system there, but also their BRT line. The Tucson Stone Avenue BRT is been funded at 60% with CIG. So in addition to their light rail line with all that, now they're looking at BRT. So cities that have great success with light rail are also looking now to expand using BRT. Frank is another one I mentioned. You look at a lot of other cities, too, are looking at bus rapid transit. So that's what's happening now. It's the hot trend.
It's a hot topic, definitely. Another thing that's fun is you just had the crew for Transit Unplugged TV filming in Montreal, and you attended the CUDA conference. What kind of things are happening in Canada that the rest of the world should be paying attention to?
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things while we were there, we toured Nova Bus Factory, and we're featuring that in our Transit Unplugged TV show for the month of January in Montreal. Nova Bus, people might be aware, they had a factory here in the United States. I think it was in Plattsburgh, New York. They had to shut it down this last year, and they explained it to me in great detail why they had to do that. Market pressures and supply chain issues, and everybody knows the issues that have happened with manufacturers here in the United States, how we went from 5 manufacturers down to 2 for a while there. Now a couple more have started up. But they just made a major decision. I talked to their president, Paul, about it, and it's on our show where he says it, and they announced it at the CUDA conference, which is they had made a decision to pull away from diesel buses and hybrid and go all electric. Now they've reversed that decision based on what's happening in the market right now, and they're going back to for next year producing diesel buses and hybrid powered buses. The other big news out of Canada is compressed natural gas buses, which is propulsion of a bus with CNG, and so that's also a big thing happening here in America. The other big thing in Canada is the Canadian Public Transit Fund. $3 billion a year is supposed to start this year, providing stable multi-year funding for BRT corridors, light rail extensions, zero-emission and hybrid fleets. It would also align with Canada's housing policy. Folks in Canada know that's a big issue up there right now, their climate goals, et cetera. But CUDA just came out. Marco D'Angelo, our friend who is the executive director and the group there, came out with some concern because this previously promised Canada Public Transit Fund that was supposed to deliver $3 billion a year to public transit starting 26-27 has been reorganized under a broader new umbrella called the Build Community Strong Grant. And some of the uncommitted funds from the CPTF were redirected toward that as well. And because it's a general infrastructure fund, not transit specific, there's concern that transit will now have to compete with many other non-transit infrastructure priorities, such as housing, roads, and water, for the same money. So there's a lot of concern about that.
Yeah, definitely. I know one of their primary concerns is just making sure there's enough money to finish the projects that are started with transit. So let's see how that shakes out. All right, what is keeping CEOs up at night as you're talking about hot topics?
Yeah. Number one is safety and security. For major transit systems, the top 50 systems in America, the FTA, the DOT, you've seen it. This is the number one push. And we've always said, look, I've been in this industry now 38 years. Wow. I remember the very first year I started in Queen Anne's County. I said, safety is number one. Everything we do has to be focused around safety. When I was at the MTA in Boulder, I remember closing every meeting, basically every big staff meeting I had, by saying, look, we've talked about all the things we're going to do. What's the one thing we're not going to have happen this next week? We're not going to have a derailment. So we do everything we can to stop derailments because that's a showstopper. And so safety is number one. But now safety, during the pandemic, it took on new forms, right? It was hygiene and those kind of things. Now it is protection of passengers and drivers from violence. There was another incident recently down in Charlotte, evidently. And so there is... they're the ones that get the headlines, right? The old adage of journalism is, if it bleeds, it leads. And unfortunately, because of the major cities in our country, like New York, getting a lot of news press when an incident occurs, it makes it appear as if transit is unsafe. And that's just not the case generally across America. But again, through repetition of these critical incidents occurring, and it latches itself onto the mentality of the public that, oh, I'm not going to ride transit, it's not safe. So that is what's keeping CEOs up at night. Folks like MJ Maynard in Las Vegas, they've now got these cameras with AI. We covered them on our TV show this year at stations, so they can even potentially identify a weapon or something like that happens. And, more cities now have ramped up their policing of their systems. They've closed up the gates so people can't jump the fare gates as easily. They're doing all kinds of things to kind of harden the system, not just against those physical attacks, but also, to be honest with you, cybersecurity has become a hot topic. We're going to cover that, Julie. You and I help put together an event every year called the Think Transit Executive Summit. That comes up this year at the end of March in Boston as part of the Think Transit Conference. And we do an executive summit there where we have 60 or more top CEOs, C-suite people there kind of in a Chatham House rule situation where we don't share who's saying what, but we share best practices. What are you doing about cybersecurity? We've got Kurt Pregler coming there from TransLink, who helped lead his agency up there in Canada on these. Every month we're hearing another transit agency has been, had a ransomware attack where they get shut down. I mean, my own alma mater in Maryland here was in the news. They had a critical incident like that, and that affects so much. And so cybersecurity, how AI is impacting transit, and also the safety of our passengers are paramount. Those are the hot topics that are keeping people up. In addition to, the budgets, but that's almost every year, ridership recovery, and technology pressure, funding uncertainty. But those three hot topics right now, I think, are the big ones, which is passenger and driver operator safety, number one. Number two, cybersecurity. Number three, how am I going to implement AI to better serve my customers and to make my system more efficient? Everyone is looking at those topics right now.
Any other hot topics that we've left off the table you want to cover, or should we move into what's going on behind the scenes with Transit Unplugged?
I think that's good. I want to, again, reiterate that the biggest high-profile events happening in 2026 for transit are the FIFA World Cup games. And there are 16 cities in the U.S. and Canada and Mexico, and many of these cities have large stadium events like New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, L.A., Seattle, Kansas City, Miami, San Francisco, Bay Area. And as I said, DOT and FTA are treating this as a national-scale mobility event. And there's formal guidance and video series out there and major event transit playbooks for host agencies. It is going to be, our transit agencies are going to be on the world stage as we think American football is big here, but it's only big basically in America and maybe a little bit in the United Kingdom. But the worldwide sport is soccer, and it's coming, or football as they call it,
football.
right?
The other football.
And I think Trump said this last week, maybe we should change the name of soccer to football because it really is using your foot here in America too. But anyway, that's going to be the big national profile event for transit in 2026. We've got to get it right. We can't have any major failures where, there's 5,000 people waiting for an hour and they're late to the game because we didn't have the coordination down. And believe me, the CEOs of those cities know it, and they're working hard to make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah.
They'll do a great job. There's no question, but a lot of pressure and all eyes are on everyone. So I think it'll go well. All right, well, let's move into Transit Unplugged and behind the scenes of everything going on. We have an episode out right now all about Italy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. This may be our most cinematic, best episode we've ever done. Jaime and I and our team over there in Europe, Jaime Quadra is our video director. We visited Italy for a week. We went to Milan, Turin, and Florence,
Roma,
and even up into Tuscany, and then Rome. And we covered how, what people visit there and how to travel using transit to get to those sites. We rode high-speed rail in between each city. We talked to the high-speed rail leaders. We show you the sites. I didn't actually get time to actually go inside any of them or many of them, but we saw them from the outside and showed you some of their amazing food and culture. We had some fun adventures that we cover on there. I tell you, the highlight for me really was the Duomo in Milan, this big cathedral they have there and how it lights up at night. And, there was one scene which I was pressing Jaime to find the video we shot. We finally got it, where one night we went out there on the piazza out in front, the plaza, and there was just like joyful dancing, a guy playing the accordion and 100 or 150 people, dancing, just, fun. It felt safe. It felt joyful, and you don't get that many places. And so I wanted to kind of show that special moment that we had there, and that's in the show as well as a lot of other great stuff. And so I encourage people, if you haven't seen it yet, our episodes now, Julie, are cracking 600,000 views per episode. Both Queen Anne's County and Connecticut is really taking hold on YouTube, and we're excited that this episode of Transit Unplugged TV was premiered on the Transportation Channel, our distribution partner, with Matthew there. And also, we're on now 23 cable access channels, public education government channels across the country. Cindy on our team has been working on building a network for us of that, which was kind of my vision. So that's coming up. And then in January, we'll show the Montreal episode that we already referred to. And then in February, it'll be Utah. And then we start filming again in March. The March episode will be Boston and the APTA conference that was held there. and the kind of the spirit of Boston. And then we jump into some great filming locations such as PSTA, St. Petersburg, Florida, and then San Antonio. We're going to go on the Canyon Spirit, which is part of the
That's really
Rocky
amazing.
Mountaineer. We're going to go to Chicago. We're deep into planning with all 4 transit agencies in Chicago and Delaware with John Sisson. And that's just the first half of the year. We're excited. We've got dates locked in for filming in all those locations.
Let's talk about the podcast, Transit Unplugged podcast. I know our next episode is going to be looking towards the future.
That's right.
David Zipper.
We've got David Zipper on, who's a great futurist and thinker in transit, lecturer at Ivy League schools, et cetera, an author. So David's going to be our guest on the December 31st episode, the end of year episode. Ought to be exciting. We've got some great guests coming up for the new year, including presidents of national transit associations will be on talking about what the trends are. We had a great year this year. When you look back at 2025, we had Super September with Demetrius Critchlow from New York City and Nora Learman from Chicago and so many, the San Antonio, so many other cities, major cities. And I'm trying to line up some big name guests in the first quarter of the year. And they've all agreed to do it. We just got to lock in the date. So I don't want to announce their names yet, but we ought to have a great first quarter of the year on the podcast. And our new podcast producer is not new anymore, but Chris O'Keefe is doing an amazing job with our podcast as well. And we're trying new approaches to things. Sonically, we have a new sonic logo that we had this year added to the beginning of each podcast. We also have, kind of for the last 6 months, Julie, we've been doing a video opening for each podcast if you watch it on YouTube. So something else to think about if you want to see a little bit more than just hear it.
I love how our programs are becoming more available in more places. So we're trying to put the shows where you are, where you consume your content. So if you want to watch Transit Unplugged TV on YouTube, because you're a YouTube person, go for it. But Transportation Channel, you can watch it on your phone. You can get the Transportation Channel app through the Apple Store. I was going to call it the iStore. And also you can watch it through streamers, right? We've got it on Roku. We've got it on Amazon Fire and Apple TV. So you can watch Transit Unplugged TV all over. And I love that the podcast, you can hear on any of the podcast directories, or you can go through our website, transitunplugged.com, and just listen there. But you can also listen to it on YouTube. I listen to a lot of podcasts on YouTube, so we've got a lot of options for you. We also have some sister podcasts that have taken off this year that's been really fun for our group. So if you love transit and you want to know what's going on in other industries, we have the Aviation Report that has just launched. The Aviation Report is hosted by Jennifer Shaw and Elaine Tremblay, and we're going to have rotating hosts on that show, so that's really fun. One episode on Miami International Airport with Maurice Jenkins, who's their innovation officer. He wants to bring sexy back to airports, which is really fun. And he's thinking about, in addition to safety and all the things that we care about with airports, he also wants them to become a destination that becomes a lot more pleasant for passengers. So he's trying to figure out what can he do to make it better for passengers. Things like, do you want to have pickleball courts at your airport? He's just thinking big. And yeah, I know, it's really fun. He's thinking really big and getting a lot of customer and community feedback. So he wants to make airports a community place, not just something you pass through. And then also a conversation about air traffic control. There's so much going on in that industry. Obviously, we're hearing about it in the headlines. So Aviation Report's really great. You can check that out on LinkedIn is a good place to find it, or just go to theaviation.report. We've got a website there. And then if you're interested in the parking industry, which I mentioned this in a previous Transit Unplugged Insider, I had no idea how fascinated I would be with parking, but it's a fascinating industry. And we have two great hosts, Jade Neville and Matt Darst, are hosting this podcast. They have a library of 9 episodes now. So if you want to go do like a deep dive and learn all about the industry, go check it out, parking-live.com. And the catalog of 9 shows is everything from how we keep people and vehicles safe in parking garages and how drones are actually transforming the parking industry. So there's lots of cool stuff going on with innovation, parking, aviation. Check it all out. We're really happy to have you join us. We just got a lot going on, Paul. I'm excited. The other thing that's fun is holiday content, right? This is the time of year that transit systems are doing really fun stuff. So feel free to check out some of our content. You can go to transitunplugged.com. You'll see links to things like in the News Minute, I'm covering how the Yale University Glee Club showed up on a Metro North train and sang to passengers. That's so fun. And so many of our agency's vehicles are decorated for the holidays, which is great fun. And we're also on our LinkedIn, go check it out. But we have a catalog, a carousel for you showing you all the transit industry sweaters. They have holiday sweaters. They're so cool. And you can vote on your favorite one. So lots of fun holiday stuff for you as well. So Paul, a big project you have coming up for next year is your new leadership book. Tell us, where are we at with that? When is it being released?
Well, thank you. And as you know, you were a big part of getting that going. So thank you for that. And you wrote the foreword to the book. I appreciate it. So Find Your X Factor is a new book that's coming out in 2026. It's being published by Morgan James, one of America's largest publishers. And it's a nonfiction book, and it's not directly related to transportation, but it's for people in the transportation industry or people that want to improve their lives. And basically the thought behind it is it's how to follow the path that's already kind of hardwired into you to identify your interests and abilities. And where they intersect, I say that's the sweet spot. That's where you can achieve great success. It's not just the commencement speaker that says, young people, follow your dreams. That's only half of the equation. You have to intersect that with what you're good at or what you're willing to get good at. And that's where you can find great success, I believe. And so that's what the book is about. It's coming out. We got, great stories from some of America's number one leaders who kind of accelerated to the top of their abilities. They're self-actualized in that area. They tell vignettes in the book about that, some related to transportation, some related to other things. And so it's a great segue into kind of personal development, TED Talk style of booking, leadership development, improving yourself. What do you want to do with your life and your career? Now that I'm of a certain age, I can look back and pull some lessons that I've learned over my career.
Yes. Now we have the experience era of the career, right?
That's right. Yeah. And we'll be giving some away at conferences and things like that, I'm sure as well. But it's actually available for pre-order right now on Barnes & Noble. I'm excited. It's, Target and Walmart already have it up. So it's great to work with a real publisher where they get me into all the bricks and mortar stores.
I mean, we can pick it up right now at Barnes & Noble or pre-order it?
Yes. At barnesandnoble.com, you can look it up and you can pre-order it right now. It's available.
Awesome. I'm on it, Paul. I'm on it. Hey, it's Christmas Eve. I just want to say Merry Christmas, Paul. It's been such a joy to work with you again this year. And I want to say some thank yous, as I'm sure you do too, to the great team we have that we get to work with every day on these shows. We're very, very blessed. So Chris O'Keefe does the podcast and the content for our team. Cindy Raskin helps with the television program and our operations. Tatiana Mekharova handles our social media. Jaime Quadra is our director of video and sound. He is so good at that stuff. Patrick Emil is our editor. And then we have support from our Midaxo family. I want to say thank you to Matt McDonough, Rod Jones, Teresa Domingo. And then we have some consultants we work with on the podcast, Jonas and Dan at Bumper. So just thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday season.
I also want to thank our listeners. We've had an amazing year in 2025. Over 1,000 new regular listeners. We're heard now in 50 countries just on Spotify. And we've had a 30% increase in followers. And I want to let people know who listen to this, if you don't get our weekly newsletter, now's the time to subscribe. You can just go to our transitunplugged.com website or pick it up on our LinkedIn site. It's just a once-a-week email. It clues you into everything coming up. So you say, oh, yeah, I want to see that. I want to listen to that podcast. I get feedback from so many people at shows. Like you mentioned, I was recently at the holiday party that WTS put on, and I had a young man come up to me who was a planner at an agency in Northern Virginia, and he said, "Oh my gosh, Paul, I'm so glad to meet you. I listen to your shows. I follow you on LinkedIn. I do blah blah blah." And so there's so many people that get bits and pieces, and maybe they say, "Oh, I didn't know you had that going on." Yeah, that's why you want the newsletter, because we've got 5 different things happening, 5 different products, live events happening, all that. So get a hold of the newsletter. It's a great Christmas gift to yourself.
Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year. We'll catch you in 2026.